Hello and welcome back to Wireman's Whimsy. Today we are going to make this You Are Beyond Incredible card. I'm using the Dahlia Days set again. It is quickly becoming one of my favorites, and our background stamp is the Drybrush. I haven't used the Drybrush very much, and at full value, this is the Petal Pink at full value. That's what it comes out as. Really, really nice. So that's the stamp sets we're using. And the Dahlia Days comes with dies. And the nice thing is there's two of most of the dies, so you can get double duty out of what you're doing. So there's a few different things in this card. This video is probably going to take a little bit longer than my normal videos do. We start out using the Stamparatus to do the background. And then I want to show you a trick for how to stamp the background before you put your dahlias on. And I also want to show you a quick trick on how to orient the dahlias. So maybe we'll start with the orientation one to start with. I've got Pear Pizzazz as my card base, and then a piece of 5 1/4 by 4 in basic white, which is going to be our background. So we're going to go from the blank white to lots of color. And then you need a scrap so that you can cut out your dahlias. I've already done one, but I wanted to demonstrate how to do the dies quickly. Because what I find is I stamp an image down, and then I take the die and I spin it, and I spin it, and I spin it, and I spin it, trying to line it up. So you'll notice on this stamp, I've made a little mark with a Sharpie on it. You can actually see it actually came off on my block. That'll clean off, no problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pencil and I'm just going to make a little, I call it a registration mark. I'm just going to make a little mark that tells me what the top of the page is. And then I use my little Sharpie mark and I make sure that Sharpie mark is at the top as well. Just like that. So now, when I come in with my dies, this is the really super duper part. I've actually got a little piece of washi tape on the top of each of the dies so that I can literally drop it down and I don't have to rotate it around trying to find where it goes, because I have that piece of washi tape on the top like that. So it lines up lickety-split. So there's 3 pieces to this. There's making sure you've put a little registration mark at the top of your page. It's making sure that you've got a registration mark at the top of your stamp. And then making sure that you've got some kind of mark. I used washi tape because sometimes if you use ink or a Sharpie on your dies, when you run them through the machine, you actually end up transferring the color onto the cutting plates, and the cutting plates transfer it back like a printing press onto your next project. So I try not to use anything that's going to transfer color directly onto the plates. So I'm just going to make sure that you can see what I'm doing here. This is going to be a bit crowded on my surface. And I'm going to line these up. Now, the registration mark doesn't matter which way you put it in the machine. And I know that there it is right there. I just took my plate off and I couldn't find it. As long as, in this case, my registration mark's here, so I'm going to make sure my washi tape is at the top. And then I just need to place this down so that it cuts it out well. And I'm just going to throw on a sticky note to hold it in place. And then I'm going to use my second die. This is fabulous if you're doing, especially if you're doing multiples. You can just do 2 at a time. So there we go. Because I need a total of 3 of these dahlias for this project. So I'm just going to sandwich that up, run it through. You don't often get to see me actually using the Stamp, Cut, and Emboss. You hear me using it, but you don't often see me using it. I'm just going to put that off to the side. And this is where the mini cut and emboss is perfect. It just fits nicely on the desktop. I have one. I never think to use it because I'm a creature of habit. I've always done it this way, so therefore I always do it this way. So look for future videos where I actually do have my mini stamp and cut and emboss out. So I have my dahlias out. I want to stamp my background now. And I showed you what first value is. And I thought it might be a bit dark, so I used second value. So let's get going on that. And there's a tip that I want to show you on this one too. I learned it, I think it was from Sam Hammond in the UK. She's Poodles, Pootles. But she puts a stamp pad underneath the door so that when she's inking up, it's not flexing up and down, because otherwise you're kind of all over the place. It's not stable. Put a stamp pad underneath, or an ink pad, and it's totally stable. So now I've got a piece of paper in here, and the magnets are holding it down, and I want second value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ink up my stamp, make sure I've got good coverage, and then I'm just going to flip it over and press it down. Then I know exactly where I need to put my piece of paper. It just needs to be inside that image. And then I can come over again, stamp it down, and now I have second value. You see the difference between first value and second value? And the reason I use the Stamparatus on these large background stamps is it makes it so much easier. So I'm finished with that. So I'm just going to put it off to the side, and let's bring our card elements in here. I'm just going to close this up. So the next trick that I used to put this card together, the first one that I did, I'll show you the first one I did. I just kind of randomly popped stamps on the back, on the background, thinking I'd like to have a flower here and I'd like to have a flower here. And I did these in the Blushing Bride. But then when I went to put them down, there was kind of random leaves loose, and I couldn't put these down where it made sense. So I decided first that the Blushing Bride wasn't really right for this card. So I went to the Flirty Flamingo. And I know where I want to put my flowers down. So I used one of my Layering Circles dies. If you've got, this one is, the cutting on it is 1 3/8. So it's just slightly smaller than the flower. So what I did was, I know I want my flowers where I want my flowers. So I just kind of laid it down like that. And then I picked these up and put the blank circle. It's just scrap paper. It's not cardstock or anything. It's just simply scrap paper. And I took and I placed them down on the card, knowing, now that gives me kind of the basics of where I want to put my leaves and that down. So these poor dahlias are getting moved all over the place. I've got my Pear Pizzazz, and I'm going to stamp my greeting. These are not the photopolymer, so you can't see through. So what I do is I use my grid paper and I line it up and I stamp it down, and I think it should be straight, slightly crooked, so I know I need to just tip this up a little bit when I put it down, and then it comes up straight. And you can see I've created a halo on here because I pushed down too hard. So what we're going to do is we're going to see what we can do to magically cover that up with other things. So I'm actually going to leave these down. You can see I've stamped over top of them. I'm just going to place some leaves like that on that one. And then I'm going to come in like this and like this. And then on this one, I'm going to tuck some leaves in like that and like that. And then I'm going to pop some leaves at the bottom like that. So now I can take my circles off because I know that those spaces are where my flowers are going to go. And because those circles are smaller than the flowers, when I put the flowers down, it looks like the leaves are coming out from underneath. So we are done with that color. And then I came in with some Highland Heather and the larger of the two small flowers and just randomly popped some flowers in, knowing that where these spaces are is where my other flowers are going to go. So just pop a few of those in. And then I've also got my So Saffron, which is one of my favorite colors and I rarely use. And I'm going to come in with the So Saffron and I'm going to pop some more flowers in. And they can be hiding underneath as well. So I'm just going to do that. Now, I have those little halos that I need to cover up. So let's see what I can do to cover those up. I've got my soft sea foam and one of the little ferns. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to see what I can do to cover those up. And I don't know that I'm going to be able to. So one of your options, if that happens to you, is you can always take a separate piece of paper, stamp your greeting on it, and cover that up. It's always an option. It happens sometimes. It just means you've rocked the stamp while you're pressing it down. So that's why the halo happens. And there's not going to be a lot I can do about that. So unfortunately, this card is going to end up, I'm going to have to do a little bit of fixing on that one. I'm just going to throw some more of these randomly around like that. Okay, so now we can use our dimensionals and we can put on our dahlias. I think maybe what I'll do first is I will stick this down to the card base. Let's use my Stampin' Seal and like that. And I will put this down like that. And then I will grab, and the dimensionals, I don't need a lot of dimensionals. In fact, I'm just going to put one dimensional in the middle of each one. And then we just peel them off. And we know we want one there because we used our circles to define where we were going to put them so we could stamp around them. So there's another one like that. And if you do have a spot you really want to cover up, you just move your dahlia around like that. And then the third one goes down like that. And I can come in and I can put another stamp on another piece and just add it over the bottom to cover that up. But for now, this is our You Are Beyond Incredible card. And the three things that we covered on this was using a stamp pad underneath the plate on your Stamparatus to keep it stable. Then how we oriented the stamp and the die with the registration mark at the top of the stamp and at the top of the page and at the top of the die to keep everything lined up. And then how to use the circles, or you can use whatever shape you want. I use circles because it's a floral one, to kind of place out where you'd like your stamping. So thank you so much for watching. I hope I have inspired you with this video, and let's create together again soon.